The life of Quincy Jones was filled with music, fame, success, and relationships that often made headlines. Over the years, he became one of the most respected figures in the entertainment world. He worked with legends, produced some of the most famous albums in history, and helped shape modern music. His career lasted more than 7 decades, and during that time he met many talented and beautiful women. In fact, Quincy Jones had 7 children with 5 different women, and he was known for dating some of the most famous actresses and models of his time. People often talked about his exciting lifestyle and the many relationships he had throughout his life. Yet despite all of that attention and all those romances, there was one woman who stood apart from the rest. Her name was Peggy Lipton. Many people knew her as a talented actress and singer, especially for her role in the popular television series The Mod Squad. She was admired for her beauty, her quiet personality, and the gentle presence she carried wherever she went. When Quincy first met Peggy in the late 1960s, both of them were already known in the entertainment world. Quincy was rising quickly as a producer, composer, and arranger who worked with some of the greatest musicians in history. Peggy, on the other hand, had become one of the most recognizable young actresses on television. Their meeting seemed almost ordinary at first, like two famous people crossing paths in Hollywood. But what began as a simple connection slowly turned into something much deeper. Their relationship started quietly, almost secretly, because Quincy was still married at the time they met. For years they kept their romance away from the public eye, trying to protect their private feelings from the constant attention of the media. In those days, interracial relationships were still controversial in many parts of America, and both Quincy and Peggy knew that going public could bring criticism and unwanted attention. Even so, their bond continued to grow stronger. Friends who knew them closely said there was a natural warmth between them, something that felt genuine and different from many other Hollywood romances. Eventually, their relationship became public, and as they expected, the reaction from some parts of the public was harsh. There were critics who questioned their relationship and people who did not understand their connection. But Quincy and Peggy tried to focus on their life together rather than the noise around them. They married in 1974 and began building a family. Over the years, they welcomed 2 daughters, including actress Rashida Jones, who would later become well known for her own work in film and television. For a time, their life seemed peaceful and hopeful. Quincy continued building his powerful music career while Peggy focused on raising their children and stepping back from some of the pressures of Hollywood. Yet, like many relationships in the entertainment industry, their marriage faced challenges. The demands of Quincy's career, constant travel, and the pressures of fame slowly created distance between them. After many years together, the couple eventually divorced in 1990. Even after their separation, however, something unusual remained between them. They never became enemies or strangers. Instead, they continued to care about each other and remained connected through their children and shared memories. Peggy Lipton stayed an important part of Quincy's life in a quiet but meaningful way. Years later, after Peggy passed away in 2019 following a battle with cancer, Quincy spoke about her with deep emotion. By then, he had lived a long and extraordinary life and had experienced many relationships, but his feelings about Peggy had never truly disappeared. In interviews late in his life, he openly admitted something that people close to him had suspected for many years. Despite everything that had happened in his life, Peggy Lipton had always been the love of his life, long before Quincy Jones became a global music legend and long before he met Peggy Lipton. His life began in very difficult circumstances. Quincy Delight Jones Jr. was born on March 14, 1933, in the south side of Chicago during the worst years of the Great Depression. Life in that part of the city was extremely hard. Many families struggled to survive. Jobs were scarce, and poverty touched almost every household. Neighborhoods were crowded with small buildings where families lived close together, and violence often existed just outside the door. For young Quincy and his brother Lloyd, childhood was not filled with comfort or safety. Instead, it was a time when they had to learn quickly how to protect themselves and stay alert. Their father worked as a carpenter and did whatever jobs he could find to support the family. Their mother, Sarah, was a caring woman who loved music and often sang at church. From her, Quincy first heard the power of music. The songs she sang had warmth and emotion, and they created moments of peace inside a life that was otherwise full of struggle. But tragedy soon struck the family. When Quincy was still a small child, his mother suffered a severe mental breakdown. One day men arrived at their home wearing white coats. Quincy watched helplessly as they forced his mother into a straitjacket and carried her away while she screamed and cried. The painful scene stayed in his memory for the rest of his life. His mother was taken to a mental hospital, and she never truly returned to the family. The loss deeply affected Quincy and changed the direction of his childhood. His father later remarried, and the family structure became more complicated with stepbrothers and stepsisters joining the household. Although his father tried to create stability, the home often felt crowded and unsettled. Quincy carried a quiet sadness from losing his mother so suddenly, and that pain stayed inside him as he grew older. In 1943, when Quincy was about 10 years old, the family moved west to Washington state. The country was in the middle of World War II, and many new jobs had opened in shipyards and factories that supported the war effort. Quincy's father hoped the move would bring a better future for the family. They traveled by bus across the country, and the trip itself showed them the harsh reality of segregation in America. At some stops along the road, they were refused service at restaurants because they were Black. They had to rely on strangers for food or wait until they reached places where they were allowed to eat. Eventually, they arrived near Seattle and settled in a small housing area called Sinclair Heights. Life there was quiet compared to Chicago, but it also felt isolated. The neighborhood sat on a hill, far from the city, and there were few stores or services nearby. For Quincy, it meant long walks through empty roads and wooded areas. At first, he felt disconnected from everything he knew, yet the move also created a moment that would change his life forever. One day, when Quincy was around 12 years old, he and several friends broke into a youth center looking for something to eat. Instead of finding snacks or food, they discovered something unexpected: a small upright piano sitting in the corner of the room. Quincy had never paid much attention to instruments before, but out of curiosity, he pressed a key. The sound that came from the piano surprised him. It felt powerful and emotional in a way he could not explain. In that simple moment, something opened inside him. Music suddenly felt like a door leading away from pain and confusion. From that day forward, he began spending more and more time around instruments. He experimented with different sounds, learning slowly how music worked. Eventually, he picked up the trumpet and started practicing seriously. Music gave him something he had never truly felt before: direction. It allowed him to express feelings he could not easily talk about and offered a path toward a different future. Without realizing it, the boy who had once struggled through a difficult childhood had just taken the first step toward becoming one of the most important figures in modern music history. As Quincy Jones grew older, music slowly became the center of his life. What began as curiosity at a small piano in a youth center quickly turned into something much deeper. By the time he entered Garfield High School in Seattle, Quincy was already spending much of his time practicing instruments and learning how music worked. He did not have expensive lessons or professional training at first, but he had determination and a natural ability to understand sound. During those school years, Quincy met someone who would change his life forever. That person was Ray Charles. Ray was a few years older and already performing regularly in small clubs and local venues. Even though he had lost his sight at a young age, Ray had an incredible musical talent and a deep understanding of rhythm, blues, and jazz. When the two young musicians met, Quincy immediately admired him. Ray had confidence and experience that Quincy did not yet have, and he was willing to share what he knew. Their friendship quickly became an important part of Quincy's development. Ray taught him not only how to play music, but how to listen carefully to every sound inside a song. He explained how arrangements worked, how instruments blended together, and how a good melody could stay in people's minds long after the performance ended. The lessons Quincy learned during that time would guide him for the rest of his career. The two young musicians began performing together whenever they could find opportunities. Sometimes they played at small weddings or community gatherings. Other times they performed in clubs where audiences wanted to dance late into the night. The pay was often very small, but the experience was priceless. Quincy learned how bands worked, how to lead musicians, and how to adjust music for different audiences. He discovered that music was not only about talent but also about discipline and teamwork. Around this time, Quincy also had a brief encounter with drugs when Ray introduced him to heroin, something that sadly affected many musicians in the jazz world during those years. Fortunately, Quincy quickly realized the danger and stopped using it after only a short time. That decision likely saved his life and allowed him to focus completely on his career. As his skills improved, new opportunities began appearing. By the age of 17, Quincy had earned a scholarship to study at what would later become the famous Berklee College of Music in Boston. For a young musician from a difficult background, this was an incredible chance to receive formal training and build a stable career in music. However, Quincy's path took an unexpected turn. Soon after arriving in Boston, he received an offer that was impossible to ignore. The well-known bandleader Lionel Hampton invited him to join his touring orchestra as a trumpeter and arranger. For Quincy, this opportunity meant traveling across the country, performing in front of large audiences, and learning directly from experienced musicians. Without hesitation, he left school and joined the band on the road. Life as a touring musician was exciting but also exhausting. The band traveled constantly from city to city, performing night after night. In many parts of the country, especially in the segregated South, Black musicians still faced discrimination and hostility. Sometimes they were refused service at restaurants or denied hotel rooms because of their race. To survive these challenges, the musicians developed small tricks and routines. They often pressed their clothes under mattresses to remove wrinkles and used steam from hotel showers to prepare their outfits before shows. Even though the work was difficult and the pay was modest, Quincy gained something far more valuable than money. He learned how professional orchestras functioned and how to arrange music in ways that made every instrument shine. These experiences helped him develop a reputation as a talented arranger, someone who could take a simple song and transform it into something powerful and unforgettable. As the years passed, Quincy continued moving forward in the music world. He worked with famous performers, wrote arrangements for major bands, and began building connections that would later change his life. Step by step, the young boy from Chicago was becoming a respected musician. And although he did not know it yet, the growing success of his career would eventually lead him to Hollywood, where his path would cross with a woman who would later become the most important love of his life, Peggy Lipton. As the career of Quincy Jones continued to grow, his reputation in the music world became stronger with every passing year. The experience he gained while touring with orchestras gave him a deep understanding of how music worked, and people in the industry quickly noticed his talent. Quincy was not just a performer who played the trumpet. He had an unusual ability to hear music in a complete and organized way. When he listened to a song, he could imagine how every instrument should sound together. This skill made him an excellent arranger, someone who could take a melody and build a powerful musical structure around it. Because of this ability, many famous musicians began asking him to help with their recordings and performances. During the 1950s, Quincy worked with several important artists in jazz and popular music. One of them was Dizzy Gillespie, a legendary musician known for his creativity and energy. Quincy joined one of Dizzy's international tours, traveling across the Middle East and South America. For a young musician, the trip was an incredible learning experience. In many cities they visited, local orchestras did not speak English, yet Quincy's written arrangements were so clear that the musicians could understand them almost immediately. Watching his music come alive in different countries helped Quincy realize that music was a universal language that connected people everywhere. After returning to the United States, his career moved even faster. He began writing music for some of the most respected performers in the industry. These included artists such as Count Basie, Ella Fitzgerald, and his longtime friend Ray Charles. Each project helped him develop new skills and expand his reputation. Musicians admired the way he blended different styles together, mixing jazz, rhythm and blues, and classical influences into something fresh and exciting. During this period, Quincy also traveled to Paris, where he studied composition with the famous music teacher Nadia Boulanger. She was known for training many of the world's greatest composers, and she quickly recognized Quincy's natural talent. Under her guidance, he learned how to structure music more carefully and how to think about composition in a deeper way. The lessons he learned in Paris stayed with him for the rest of his life. Even with his growing success, however, Quincy's journey was not always easy. In the early 1960s, he formed his own touring big band, hoping to create a musical project that reflected his vision. The band received strong praise from critics, but financially it struggled. Traveling with a large group of musicians was expensive, and ticket sales did not always cover the costs. Eventually, the band collapsed, leaving Quincy with heavy debts that nearly ruined him financially. For a time, he feared that his career might fall apart. Instead of giving up, he began rebuilding his professional life step by step. He returned to arranging and producing music in New York, taking on any project that allowed him to move forward. His persistence soon paid off when he joined Mercury Records, where he became one of the first Black executives at a major record company. This was a remarkable achievement during a time when the music industry was still deeply divided by race. At Mercury Records, Quincy helped guide recordings across several styles, including jazz, pop, and rhythm and blues. His leadership showed that he was not only a talented musician but also someone who understood the business side of music. Around the same time, he began exploring another creative field, film. Quincy composed music for movies, becoming one of the first Black composers to work regularly in Hollywood. One of his early film scores was for the movie The Pawnbroker, which opened new doors for him in the film industry. His ability to create emotional and dramatic music made him valuable to filmmakers who wanted soundtracks that added depth to their stories. By the late 1960s, Quincy Jones had built a powerful reputation as a producer, composer, and arranger. His career had taken him across the world, introduced him to many legendary performers, and placed him among the most respected figures in the music industry. Yet, even with all this success, something unexpected was about to happen. In the middle of his rising career, he would meet a woman whose presence would change his personal life forever. That woman was Peggy Lipton, and their relationship would become one of the most important chapters in his life. By the late 1960s, Quincy Jones had already built an impressive career in music and film. He had worked with some of the biggest names in the entertainment world, traveled across different continents, and earned respect as one of the most talented arrangers and producers of his generation. Yet while his professional life seemed exciting and successful, his personal life was more complicated. Like many people in the entertainment industry, Quincy spent long hours working in studios, traveling, and meeting new artists. During this time, he also experienced several relationships, but none of them would leave a lasting emotional mark the way one particular woman eventually did. That woman was Peggy Lipton. Peggy was already becoming a well-known face on American television when their paths crossed. She starred in the popular TV series The Mod Squad, which made her one of the most recognizable young actresses of the late 1960s. Viewers admired her calm personality, natural beauty, and gentle presence on screen. Unlike many Hollywood celebrities who enjoyed constant attention, Peggy was known for being quiet and somewhat shy. She preferred a peaceful life away from the loud parties and constant spotlight that often surrounded famous actors. When Quincy first met Peggy around 1969, their connection did not happen in a dramatic or public way. Instead, it began quietly, almost privately, through the social circles of the entertainment industry. At first, they simply enjoyed talking with each other and sharing their thoughts about music, acting, and life in Hollywood. But as time passed, their friendship slowly turned into something deeper. Both of them felt a natural comfort in each other's company. Quincy admired Peggy's calm personality and kindness, while Peggy respected Quincy's intelligence and creativity. However, their growing relationship faced an immediate problem. At the time they met, Quincy was still married to another woman. Because of this situation, they knew their relationship could not be public. For several years, they kept their feelings hidden from the media and the public. During that period, America was still dealing with strong racial divisions, and interracial relationships were often judged harshly by many people. Quincy, an African-American musician, and Peggy, a white actress, understood that their relationship could create controversy if it became public. Even in the entertainment world, which was sometimes more open-minded than other parts of society, such relationships were not always accepted easily. Despite these challenges, their bond continued to grow stronger. Friends who saw them together noticed the warmth between them. They did not behave like a typical Hollywood couple seeking attention. Instead, their connection seemed genuine and deeply personal. Eventually, Quincy ended his previous marriage, and he and Peggy decided they no longer wanted to hide their relationship. When their romance finally became public, reactions were mixed. Some fans supported them, while others criticized their relationship because of racial prejudice that still existed at the time. The couple suddenly found themselves dealing with public attention and criticism that they had hoped to avoid. Yet they remained committed to each other and tried to focus on building a life together. In 1974, Quincy Jones and Peggy Lipton married. For a while, their marriage appeared to bring balance to Quincy's busy life. Peggy often chose to step away from the pressures of Hollywood so she could focus on family life, while Quincy continued expanding his career in music production and film scoring.